That's a big question. I'm hearing optimism from some, pessimism from some. I think that women are so different that to to come up with some sort of a catch-all and take everybody's temperature at once is pretty hard these days. We have come a long way, so there is a lot to be celebrating.
Well, that's a good thing. And I started to tell the story to my listeners about how you had a boss who you called him the tormentor, and he just told you that you had gone as far as you were going to go, and where you were is as good as you were going to get.
Yeah.
You experienced something that I think happens to a lot of us, in that when somebody tells you that, and sometimes it's not even that they're the tormentors, they're just saying that they're looking out for your own good, which I don't always think that's true, but they say that's what their motivation is. But in that situation, you felt demoralized, your self-esteem plunged, and you felt yourself slacking off from work. Now, I once had a boss who told me I was like an indentured servant. And so it's that same kind of thing. It makes you not feel motivated. Well, how did you turn that around? You did turn it around, but how did you do that?
Well, I worked really hard to dig out of the hole and did everything I could to get his approval and respect. And I got a promotion from someone else, and it was in newspapers. I was a journalist, and I was getting promoted to be an editor. And she brought me into the evening editing meeting, and he had gotten another promotion, and she said that I was going to be doing this new job, and he says, "Oh no, there's been no promotion. She's just a reporter." So that was a really important defining moment for me. I got up, I went out to my desk, picked up the phone, and I called the editor of the paper in Tampa who'd been trying to get me for 4 years, and I said, "If you're going to do it right now." And he did. It's interesting, though, by contrast, that this guy, who was a real bully, did the same thing to a male reporter and said that he would never be more than he was at that time. And that guy just said, fine, quit, went to the Los Angeles Times, won a Pulitzer Prize, had 2 number 1 best-selling books on the New York Times bestseller list, and they made movies from his work. So I think that he had a better reaction. I really did something that I wish I hadn't, which was give this guy more of my time, just trying to get him to make me feel better about myself.
But she's fun. Don't we sometimes do that? I don't know why. I don't know if that's just women who do that. It's like I see it with myself. When somebody tells him he can't, he's like, "I'll show you," and then he goes out and it's like it's a motivator for him. The day that boss said to me, "Oh, I like this. You're like an indentured servant," I felt like I was at the bottom of the pit.
Well, I think it depends also on where we are at those times in our life. I was much younger when this happened, but I do think that women are more inclined to internalize it. It's like that old cartoon where you've got a woman standing in front of the mirror just trying to squeeze into a pair of really tight jeans. And the caption is, "I can't believe I've let myself get so fat. What a pig. I've got to go on a diet." And in the next frame is the husband squeezing into an even tighter pair of pants. And the caption says, "Something wrong with these pants." And
that's the truth.
Yeah, it is really a true thing. So it's kind of the way we play the game. Hopefully, we're getting better at it, though.
Oh, I hope that's true. And Fawn, you were talking about and my audience are women in midlife, and one of the things you said, I believe that I took it off your website, that you want women to know the rules have changed. You can't wait this out, and you can't coast, because those who do are diving into irrelevance. Success now depends on adaptability and an ever-changing skill set. I find that so much with women in that 40, 45, 50, 55 age group where they're like, and they're not adapting.
Yeah, but, Anne Marie, where do you get this idea that that's only with women doing that? That is not a female thing. That's a generational thing. That is absolutely equally as difficult for men as women. You saw that when so many people got laid off during the downturn and they aged out. And that had nothing to do, their abilities there had nothing to do with whether they were male or female. It was whether they were willing to to learn what it took to adapt. And so, I make a strong case, whether I'm talking to men or women or both, to say make yourself viable, make yourself resilient, because you can spend your whole career trying to get somewhere so that you can get respect and rest on your laurels, and that counts for nothing now, because there are kids coming out of college who will work for a third of what you'll work for, and they've got 10 times the skills in their thumbs than we have in 10 fingers and 10 toes. So viability is a huge issue for everyone.
Hmm. So if there were two things that you could tell anybody, man or woman, because we have some men who listen to our show also, what they could do to quickly get to that place of adapting and changing their skills, what are two things that you think that are most glaring that they're not doing?
Well, a lot of people are in denial. I mean, how many people do you know who said, well, I'll just wait this out, thinking that social media was going to be a fad? And all of these things, then it gets overwhelming. And I think a really good example of that is when the internet first appeared. And I was still working in the newsroom, and they kept talking about this information superhighway.
Mm.
And they kept saying there's this information superhighway, and I didn't know what it was. All I knew was I forgot to get on it. And I'd see the other reporters going over and using the information superhighway, which was the internet, the very early internet.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, I really missed the boat on this. I slept through that one. And finally I said something to another coworker, and I said, I don't know how to use the information superhighway. She says, come here. And so she takes me over to the computer, and she shows me I have this choice. And at that time it was Yahoo and Alta Vista, and remember those InfoSeek and all the early search engines.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, just type something in. This is a long time ago, so I typed in O.J. Simpson. And then everything about O.J. Simpson popped up. And then I was learning to play darts, so I typed in darts. And then suddenly I was an expert on the information superhighway. Well, we've taken our time to say we have to do these things we don't like to do. We have to blog. We have to tweet. We got to do all this stuff. And it was so much easier when we didn't have to worry about any of that stuff, when we left the office and then came back and somebody handed us a little pink slip of paper that said, while you were out. I really miss those days, let me tell you. But they are long gone.
Yep.
So,
I agree with you.
Yeah, so absolutely.
And if we're not paying attention to, like Facebook, for example, excuse me, the kids are more on Instagram and Vine and all, but women in midlife, that has become like the big thing for middle-aged women is the Facebook.
Yeah.
And Twitter, it's a little bit faster.
It's not really all that different. It's just, I miss talking to people. But again, I don't, do you think that that's a gender thing? I don't think so. Because I hear men when I'm speaking to saying the same thing on it. I think that maybe women go a little deeper in looking up people. I think that's kind of fun. But
you know what I think is that and I see it even just with my staff. He's more willing to learn, and also he doesn't have 47 other things that have to be taken care of. That he can move his mind. He can ignore everything else, and he can move his mind to a place where, okay, I'm going to focus on this today, and then he does focus on that. While I have 6 other things going on in my head, like, oh, and I have to do this and this and this and this and this. So it takes me a little bit longer to get that focus.
Well, let me tell you something. But where the real issue is for women with all of these different things is that we could work 24 hours a day, and because of so many different technological pulls, we have to work more. We already had an issue balancing our lives. Now that becomes an even greater challenge.
So I guess there's some things that we just have to let go.
Yeah, that's and if you're strong enough to let go, I salute you. I try to teach women to do that all the time. Know what matters.
Yeah, that's right, and that goes back to what do you value, where are you in your life, what do you value, and then, for people like us that it's part of our business, we have to have to learn all of those skill sets. But it's the same thing for somebody who doesn't want to, just as you say, become irrelevant. Even if it's just staying relevant with your children and your grandchildren.
Sure.
Yeah. I have to take a break. So, Fawn, we're going to thank our sponsors, and then we'll come back with you. I want to hear about Hillary Clinton and Dr. Kennedy.
Okay.
Fawn Germer. Fawn, one of the things that I really loved about that you said in Mustang Sally's, and I can't remember right this minute who it was, but there was somebody you really wanted to interview, and then you didn't. I think that, I can't remember if you called and you didn't get an answer, and then you never pursued it, but a while later you met that person and told her the whole story, and she said, "Oh, you should have called. I would have done that interview."
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm her name's not coming to me. Yes, that sometimes you don't get to the right people.
And sometimes I think that
It was Maureen Dowd. That's who it was. I'm sorry. There we go. Maureen Dowd said, "Oh, I would have done that."
There you go. And a lot of times we sort of talk ourselves out of doing something that we want to do because for a variety of reasons. What do you do? And let me ask you this, because you have in your best and worst and pearls of wisdom, you talked about your most strategic situation occurring with Hillary Clinton. Can you tell us that story?
Well, yeah, I was keynote speaker for an event for the American Association of Newspaper Editors, and they were then going to the Senate office building to have a meet and greet with then Senator Clinton. And I knew that if I requested an interview with her, I wasn't going to get it. And my editor, my former editor of the Washington Post, was shocked I ever got it because she never would have done an interview like this. But she did a 5-minute talk. All these editors were right there, but they weren't remembering what you have to do as a reporter. And I certainly hadn't forgotten that so quickly. So as soon as she opened up for questions, my hand went up and I started talking before she ever called on me, because that's how it works. And so I asked the first question, and as she winds down, I asked the second, and I asked so many questions, and there was so much going on in the world that they could have asked her about, but none of them remembered that it's all about how well you interrupt. And so afterwards, I just went up, I told her I was doing a book, I'd like to use it, and then she was fine with it. Well, she didn't say she wasn't fine with it, so it happened in a public place. I thought, score.
Yeah. Sometimes, I call myself a recovering good girl because I've been doing so many good girl things all of my life. I would never have interrupted because, that's not a good girl thing. But, sometimes you really do. You have to put yourself right in front of somebody's face.
Well, and plus I had dealt with Hillary Clinton when I was a reporter, and she wasn't so nice to the press, and so I just went right into mode. That didn't bother me. Now, I still cheer her on and everything. I'm a big fan, but that wasn't a good girl situation. That was a matter of, you want to get the story. It's kind of like catching the bouquet at a wedding. If you jump high and reach hard, you're going to get it.
What do you think helps a woman to break out of that mode of, oh, I have to be respectful, or all of those things that keep us from moving forward and getting the really good stuff that we want?
Wait, so you're saying what keeps us from doing that?
Yeah, like another woman might have backed away and not gotten that interview.
Yeah, and another one might have gotten a better one. I think there's, women have come a long, long way since I first woke up to women's issues. Let's see, that was about 1993 was I had my awakening. And, they have really come a long way. The one place that we do hurt ourselves is on our self-confidence and our self-esteem. And that's very sad. I always try to get that into every speech that I give anywhere, because that is our universal. And men have this too, but women just really beat themselves up. We start the day and we look in the mirror and we're like picking at our hair, our skin, and our wrinkles and our weight, and that affects our performance. It has to. You can't keep putting negative in and expect to get positive out. So you have to really overwrite that. Although I tell people, feel free to have low self-esteem. It's just guaranteed self-employment for me for the rest of my life.
Mm, mm. Well, that's when you say that the self-esteem. There was someone you interviewed, Kristen Hughes, who she was the founder of a vitamin store, and she had a problem with her weight. And you say in Hard Won Wisdom, you say that she's the reason that you asked every woman in Hard Won Wisdom about their self-esteem. What did she tell you that made you decide to ask other women about that?
Well, let's talk about her for a second, because it wasn't a vitamin store. She is the founder of a company that she started with $150 and an idea. She had no college degree, 7 kids, and just a lot of guts. And she created Nature's Sunshine Vitamins, which many of your listeners will be familiar with. It's a multi-level vitamin company that this year will gross more than $400 million. She is a superstar, and I interviewed her right after she was on the cover of Bloomberg, and I said, well, what's your leadership style? And she said, well, I get up in the morning, I go to the closet and try to find something that fits me because I'm overweight, and then I go out in the world and I just try to do the best that I can. And I said, well, let's talk about your weight. And the sigh from her was the same sigh I had let out many a time for myself. And I said, wow, you have everything all of us are striving to get, and you still have low self-esteem? She says, oh, yeah. I said, well, maybe you should get some therapy about that. And she said, I could be in therapy the rest of my life. It wouldn't fix this. And then I asked everybody about their self-esteem and found out that universally, that is the disease of our kind. That is the one thing that we can fix and we do nothing about. We just negative, negative, negative. Now, I have really good self-esteem because of this. Because when I found out how low the self-esteem of my heroes was, it was like, oh, this is a game we are playing on ourselves. It really is. You have to just turn it off and say, look around you. If you see the most well put together person wearing the Lululemon yoga clothes, looking just perfectly dainty and fine and beautiful, that person has the same self-esteem issue that you have. There are very few people that get up and say, gosh, don't I look hot today? Aren't I smart? I am just the best thing. I got it all going on. Nobody does that. Now, what I do is if I start to hear something negative, I'm like, just shut up. It's like, this stuff isn't real. Go live your life. So I just tune it out. And I do a lot of affirmation work, which I'm a big proponent of, because I think you really can control what you put into your head. Just have to actively make up your mind. It's like many of us know that you make a choice to be happy or not be happy, correct?
Right.
Well, you make that same choice on whether you're going to feel good about yourself or not, or whether you're going to live a life of fear or not. You just take charge of your brain. It's your brain.
Yeah, and there's one man that I know who used to say, you've been writing on the walls of your mind. And and whatever they've written, erase it. If it doesn't serve your purposes, erase what's written on the walls of your mind. And affirmations are one of the things that he talks about also.
Yeah, they're really good. I know that one thing about affirmations, and you have to write them the correct way, which is, it has to be a positive voice. So you don't say, I don't think I'm fat anymore. You say, boy, I look thin and beautiful. But science shows that if you repeat something enough times, it becomes your truth. So if you say I'm thin and beautiful enough times, you start to automatically lose weight. There's a very important caveat to that, and that is you have to be ready to say it and hear it. Because if your mind is tuned out to it, it will not work. And I have a really good example of that, which was my mom died in January. And I always knew that when that happened, I was going to do what I learned to do in coping with anything over the years, is that I don't need to medicate myself. I need a good dose of affirmations, gratitude, nature and the outdoors. What was the other thing? I found that loud music was really wonderful to dance to with all this. But my mom died, and I wrote 8 affirmations down. They were great affirmations. And I couldn't say them. I didn't have it in me to say them. And that's why when I say you have to be ready, you have to be ready. And so I had to do my grieving. and I had to go through it.
Right.
And the day came, I heard that old song, Feeling Stronger Every Day, and there's a line in it that said, knowing that you would have wanted it this way, I do believe I'm feeling stronger every day. And that became my one affirmation that I said hundreds of times, and that was when the turnaround came. It was when I thought every day I'm going to feel a little stronger.
That makes a lot of sense. And I know you had, am I remembering this correctly, you were caregiving for your mom?
No, my father. My father was her caregiver and a hero because she was sick for 20 years and then she got Alzheimer's and finally he had to let her go to a nursing home and he would visit her 4 times a day and he would put her makeup on first thing in the morning. And then when she passed, he couldn't make it 3 more months. That was it. But, you know, I had great parents. What heroes. We can learn a lot from them. Yeah, really lovely people.
You're very lucky, and that's a good thing, and I'm sure that helps in your whole process. Maybe there were people that being your parents that loved you enough to help you love yourself, even when you couldn't love yourself.
Oh yeah, they were wonderful for that. And you know, and if you don't have people like that in your life, and you weren't raised by people like that, you can find them because we do choose a certain amount of family for ourselves, the people we hold close to us, and I think one of the pre-questions he sent was on, you know, what do you do when you're going through a hard thing is put people around you that make you a better you, that bring out the best in you, that hold you up when you're having a hard time and help you celebrate when things are good. Because the people you choose, they will make your life beautiful or they'll make it empty. So you have to choose right.
Yeah, I agree with you, Fawn, and I've always said that some of the people who love you the most and will help you the most, who will wrap themselves around you in love, are not necessarily of your blood.
Right.
So if you don't have that as part of your bloodline family, you can create another family.
Right. And I think you see that because sometimes you see 2 kids coming out of a troubled home, and one is an absolute disaster, and the other is just soaring high. And it's because that person made a choice in how they wanted to live, which we talked about that already, and then also surrounded himself or herself with good people that built a foundation that wasn't already there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, before we go, I'd like you to tell me a little bit about Dr. Alexa Kennedy, who was the first African-American woman to be a neurosurgeon, and you say she changed your world and helped you stop feeling like an outsider.
Yeah.
I know a lot of women who feel that way. What did she say, and how did that change?
Oh my God, I remember this. I was on my very first book tour, and I stopped by the University of Michigan just to watch a women's conference. I wasn't speaking there, and she talked about the status quo and looked out at this audience and said, stop looking to the status quo to validate you because it won't validate you. The status quo is the status quo for a reason. It does not want to change. And Amory, I was sitting there and I was just blown away by that because I had gotten in so much trouble for doing the right thing. I knew that we had issues at the newspaper where I was where they weren't doing a good job of being fair and covering women and minorities. And I pushed so hard for this change. And that is what really riled up the tormentor. That's what made, and I also refer to him as a boss hole. That's what really made him hate me, was that, you know, I had pushed for something that on its face is so right. How can you argue against fair coverage of men, of women and minorities? How can you say that's not a good thing? And it made him crazy. So, you know, I knew I was doing the right thing, and yet I wasn't getting applauded or appreciated or surrounded with love because it was right. And when I saw Kennedy and she said that, I thought, I get it. Because she is absolutely right. The status quo doesn't want to change. And it won't change until, you know, it goes through a numerous incarnations. And there's a quote in one of my books from Miriam Reed, which actually dovetails perfectly with this, saying how, you know, at first the reaction you're going to get is, that won't work. it's a stupid idea. And then the next reaction is, that won't work, it's a stupid idea, but we'll give it a test period. To the test period working just great, and they say, well, we'll implement it. And then it flies like it's just the best thing ever. And then the person who criticized it in the first place takes credit for it. And that's kind of how it goes. But,
Yeah.
we're making a lot of history here. And we have to remember that it's a slow process. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen as quickly as we want, but it happens. And this world has changed so dramatically in my lifetime. I'm 53 now. I'd like to think a really young 53 because I do have a lot of fun and everything. But in my lifetime, I grew up in a time where when I was a kid, you could see classified ads in the paper and they had separate jobs for men and women. And in my lifetime, women could not get credit in their names. That when women were beaten, the cops would say, well, why did you make him mad? Or if she was raped, they'd say, why did you
dress that way?
Right, why did you dress that way? Didn't you know that would entice somebody? Or, they had caps on admissions into professional schools, certain number of lawyers, certain number of doctors. That list just goes on and on. And these are things that we forget, which we must share to the younger ones so that they know what they have to protect. But this world has changed. And I always say, if you go to work without being minimized or harassed or discriminated against, you need to thank every woman in her 60s, 70s, and 80s, because those are the women who did it. Those are the women who changed this world for us. And now I see these younger ones, and that's the thing. I see so much positive energy out there. I love it. That they haven't.
That my producer Bryn is that kind of a woman, and she's in her mid-20s, and she's full of life, and she has a lot of really good. It's fun when I come in to do the show because she's got that energy.
Yeah, and isn't it great? And then imagine, where is she going to be in 10 years, in 20 years? There's just no saying. Because when I started pushing on the coverage of women and minorities, I remember someone asked me a question publicly and said, do you think there will ever be a woman president in your lifetime? And I said, no, not in my lifetime. But there sure as heck is going to be. And I will be right there behind her. And probably several. And won't that be great? Won't that be great? Because that will be a different world.
Well, Fawn, we are so happy that you came to Happy Hour today. You were awesome. And I don't want you to go without telling my listeners how they can find you if they are looking for a speaker, a keynote speaker for their next conference. How can they find you?
My website is www.fawngermer.com, and I'll spell that. It's FAWNGERMER.com, fawngermer.com. And I love hearing from people. Add me on Facebook, write me. I really get a lot of energy and information from people because I'm not in the cubicle anymore, so I need to know what life is like on the outside. So, and I enjoyed this. But now I think about it, if it was happy hour, I should have been having a glass of wine with you.
There you go.
I know.
It would have been a nice thing to do that. And listen, sometime if you're up in the Philly area, come and we'll have that glass of wine together.
Oh, that sounds good. Except I don't want to go until summer.
No, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, we'll do something fun.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Oh, and thanks again. I really appreciate that you're here.
Anne-Marie, thank you so much, and have a great weekend to everybody up there in Philadelphia.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
We'll see you.
Sure thing. Bye-bye.